let's dive into this match report you sent over.
Right.
It's from Sky Sports.
Yeah.
And it's about France's 30-29 victory over New Zealand on November 16th.
Mm-hmm.
And I got to admit, even for a seasoned rugby fan like myself, France beating New Zealand again for the third time in a row, that's got me thinking.
Yeah, it's definitely turning heads. And it's not just the win, it's the way they're winning, you know? It wasn't just a lucky bounce or a ref's call or something. It was a statement.
Exactly. So what we're going to unpack today is whether this is just a blip or are we witnessing like a genuine shift in the global rugby landscape?
I'm eager to dig into that.
Yeah.
Let's start with the match itself. Stade de France, packed house electric atmosphere. You can practically feel it through the reporter.
I know, right? In New Zealand, they came out firing. It really felt like vintage All Blacks early on. They were up 14-3 within the first 20 minutes. Tries from Lakai and Roygard, and then those Barrett conversions. It's just clinical.
Yeah, and it's interesting you say vintage All Blacks. Because even in their dominance, there was this like a hint of something different. Remember, France weathered that storm. They didn't crumble under that initial pressure, which is something we might have seen, in the past.
That's a great point. So what changed? Because the match report says that France found their footing in the second half. First, there was that debut try from Romain Burros. What a way to announce yourself on the international stage. And it was brilliant play by Dupont to set it up.
Dupont is a maestro, wasn't he? But even beyond just individual brilliance, you saw France begin to exploit some gaps in New Zealand's defense, particularly around the fringes. Then you had Boudhent powering over from a line-out maul.
Hold on. For those who might not be as familiar with rugby, can you explain what a line-out maul is?
Of course. So imagine a line of players from each team forming up after the ball goes out of bounds. The team throwing the ball in will toss it to their own line, and then they basically try to muscle their way forward as a unit. With the ball carrier protected in the middle of that maul, it's a real test of strength and coordination.
Okay. That makes sense. So back to the game. Barari, that try just electric. Ramos intercepts the pass, kicks it ahead, and Barari just explodes. It was just pure speed and opportunistic play.
And that's what's so exciting about this French team, You have the tactical awareness of a Dupont, the power of a Boudhent, and then this raw, game-breaking talent like Barari. It's a potent mix.
New Zealand did fight back, though. It got pretty nail-biting there at the end.
Yeah.
With McKenzie slotting those penalties. But France held on. 3 wins in a row against the All Blacks. What's the historical context here?
Well, this ties France's longest winning streak against the All Blacks, which they last achieved way back in 1994-95.
Wow, 1994. The rugby world was a completely different place back then. What does this say about France's current trajectory, especially with the World Cup on the horizon?
Well, it's a huge statement. And for rugby fans worldwide, it signals a potential changing of the guard. But to understand the full significance of this win, I think we need to look beyond the scoreline. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely.
So what's fascinating here is that France's win, it wasn't just about individual brilliance, it was a testament to their adaptability. They absorbed that early pressure from New Zealand and then shifted their game plan.
So it wasn't just weathering the storm. They actually changed their approach during the game.
Exactly. They recognized New Zealand's strengths, like their powerful scrum. And they found ways to kind of counter them. You saw them focusing on quick ball movement, exploiting space out wide, and really using their pace to their advantage.
Yeah, and that's where players like Barari really come in. He's lightning fast.
Precisely. And it's not just him. The match report mentions Dupont's tactical kicking, which really pinned New Zealand back and disrupted their rhythm. These are subtle but crucial shifts in momentum.
Yeah, it sounds like this French team has a depth of talent and tactical flexibility that we haven't seen from them in recent years.
Absolutely, and that's a worrying sign for other teams, including New Zealand. Remember that collision early on between Finau and Tatafu?
Yeah.
Both players had to leave the field.
Yeah, that was a brutal reminder of just how physical this sport can be.
Right, and it highlights the importance of squad depth in modern rugby. France was able to bring on replacements without missing a beat. That's the sign of a well-coached team with a strong bench.
Okay, so let's talk about the implications. What does this win mean for both teams going forward? New Zealand, obviously.
Yeah.
They'll be analyzing this match very closely.
They have to. There were cracks in their usually impenetrable armor. They relied heavily on penalties in the second half, which suggests that they struggled to break down France's defense. They'll need to find solutions before facing Italy in their next match.
And what about France? They're on a roll right now. This win must be a huge confidence booster.
Without a doubt. But the key for France will be to maintain this momentum. They face Argentina next, which will be another tough test. The real question is, can they replicate this performance consistently, especially on the big stage of the World Cup?
Right, that's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
Hmm.
This win has certainly put them in the spotlight. Do you think this is shaking up the World Cup predictions at all?
It has to. You can't ignore a team that has just beaten the All Blacks 3 times in a row. It's a psychological blow to New Zealand and a statement of intent from France. But let's not forget, the World Cup is a different beast altogether.
Right, the pressure, the expectations, the global stage, it could all add up.
Exactly. And that's where mental fortitude comes in. New Zealand has always excelled in that department. They have a history of peaking at the right time.
But this French team, they seem to have like a different kind of mental toughness. They don't crumble under pressure anymore.
Yeah, they're playing with a swagger, a belief in their abilities that we haven't seen in a long time, and that's contagious. It spreads throughout the team, the fans, even the commentators.
It's like they've rediscovered their identity as a rugby nation.
And that's perhaps the most significant aspect of this win. It's not just about the points on the scoreboard. It's about a resurgence of French rugby, a reclaiming of their place among the elite.
That's an exciting prospect for rugby fans around the world. More competition at the top can only be a good thing for the sport.
I agree. And it adds another layer of intrigue to the upcoming World Cup.
So for our listeners who might be hearing about this result for the first time, what's the one takeaway you want them to remember about this match?
I'd say this wasn't just an upset. This was a sign of a shifting tide in international rugby. France is a team on the rise, and they're not just here to participate, they're here to win.
Yeah, it really does feel like we're witnessing a changing of the guard in rugby. For years, New Zealand has been the benchmark, the team that everyone aspired to be. But now we have France stepping up and challenging that dominance. What do you make of this shift like from a historical perspective?
It's cyclical, Every sport goes through periods where certain teams or nations dominate. Think of the West Indies cricket team in the 70s and 80s, or the Chicago Bulls in the 90s. Dominance is rarely permanent. New challengers emerge, tactics evolve, and eventually the balance of power shifts.
And it seems like France is leading that charge in rugby right now. They're playing with a flair and confidence that's reminiscent of those great French teams of the past.
Absolutely. There's a certain panache to their game, an unpredictability that makes them incredibly dangerous. They're not afraid to take risks, to try something audacious. Remember that try by Barari? That was a perfect example of their willingness to attack from anywhere on the field.
Yeah, that try was definitely a highlight reel moment for sure.
Yeah.
But beyond the individual brilliance, what impressed me was their collective strength. They were strong in the scrums, their lineouts were efficient, and their defense, while not perfect, was vastly improved from previous years.
That's a crucial point. To beat a team like New Zealand, you need to be strong in all facets of the game. You can't just rely on individual talent or a flashy attacking style. France demonstrated a level of maturity and tactical discipline that we haven't seen from them consistently in the past.
So what does this mean for the upcoming World Cup? France is hosting.
Right.
They have the momentum, and they clearly have the talent. Are they the favorites now?
I think it's too early to crown them champions. The World Cup is a pressure cooker. It's a different beast altogether. But they've certainly put the rugby world on notice. And for fans, this adds a whole new level of excitement to the tournament.
Absolutely. It's no longer a foregone conclusion that New Zealand will lift the trophy. We have a genuine contender in France. And that makes every match unpredictable and potentially thrilling.
And let's not forget about the other teams vying for the title. South Africa, always a force to be reckoned with. Ireland playing some brilliant rugby under their new coach. And even teams like Australia and Argentina, capable of causing upsets on their day.
Yeah, it's shaping up to be a truly captivating World Cup. So for our listeners out there who maybe haven't been paying close attention to rugby lately, why should they tune in? Why should they care about this French resurgence?
Because we're witnessing a potential changing of the guard in one of the world's most exciting and physically demanding sports. France is playing a brand of rugby that's both exhilarating and inspiring. And beyond that, this World Cup has the potential to be one of the most competitive and unpredictable tournaments in history. There's no better time to be a rugby fan.
Well said. It's been a fascinating deep dive into this match report, and you've given our listeners plenty to think about as they watch the rugby season unfold. Any final thoughts you'd like to leave them with?
I think this French team has reminded us that in sport, as in life, nothing stays the same forever. Dominance is fleeting, the underdogs can rise, and when they do, it can be spectacular.
I couldn't agree more. This is why we love sport. for the drama, the passion, the unexpected twists and turns. So to our listeners, keep your eyes on France. They might just be writing a new chapter in rugby history. And who knows, maybe this is just the beginning of a long and glorious reign. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. Until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep that passion for rugby burning bright.